secrets. If you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays kids more worried about
Alright, what's good, y'all? As you can see, compared to my last rant video that I made, I'm a lot more laid back on this one, and I just got some thoughts that I just want to share. I mean, this isn't like a podcast or anything. I'm still working on that, but I just like putting out these little videos of just me talking about things that I see and different ideas and stuff like that, because aside from a podcast, these are a lot easier to make. I mean, for all my people who are into video production and work with Final Cut Pro and stuff like that, y'all know how difficult it is to make a video, especially when you want to make it real good, and you got to find different video clips, movie clips, screenshots, different photos. Me getting into this realm of being a content creator on YouTube really opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and I really appreciate all of my melanated black YouTubers out there who's slaving and making videos like every other day and all of that stuff, because being that I'm still new to this type of stuff, I saw early on that this was going to be very hard work to do, and sometimes you got to have that balance between work and play. You know, that's why I always just like talking about things that I want to talk about on my own terms, and I'm the boss of myself when it comes to this, so I won't overwhelm myself with having to make content at a scheduled time and all of that, because me working on spirit, when I come out with a video period, it's going to always come at the right time. And that's something that I've really been noticing when it comes to these podcasts that I come out with. No matter how long it takes for me to do it, when I finally do it and come out with it, it's always going to be at the right time. And like I always say, everything that I talk about in these little rant videos and these other little side videos, when I do my main podcast talking about Biggie, all of this stuff is going to tie into that. So I was just outside yesterday, sitting outside in the patio, got my little spliffy, you know, listening to Dr. B.O.A., then listening to C Boogie, listening to Stefan Clinkscales. And it's funny because he literally just put out a video talking about the stuff that I'm gonna touch on today, even though this video probably isn't gonna come out the day that I recorded. And the funny part about it is listening to these brothers' opinions when they talk about different strategies on how to treat women and just things about life in general, because of their environments that they came from. And most of those environments aren't something that I came from. I can't agree with every single thing that they say because I got my own mind and I have my own way of doing things, but a lot of what they say I do agree with. So I got this inkling to put some Barry White on, so I cut them off, and this one song that Barry White made, Play Your Game, and it's like as soon as I cut that song on, I just felt like I was in another world. And the thing about it is, I'm no stranger to Barry White. I've listened to his songs and listened to his records and all of that ever since I was a little kid. My mom, she would play Barry White, Marvin Gaye, Luther Vandross, you name it. Like, I'm a old school kid that didn't grow up in the old school era, but I know a lot about old school music. And doing my further research, finding out that Barry White himself was a Virgo, I just immediately got curious and wanted to learn more about Barry White. And in a lot of ways, it really inspired me to make this video. Now, this isn't a podcast, so I'm not gonna go super deep about Barry White. I'm gonna save that for if I ever want to do like a podcast form about him, like I did about Left Eye and Selena. But there was a couple things about Barry White's life that really inspired me, and one of those things were that Barry White always been like a big, tall type of dude, even when he was a lot younger. So with him coming from the environment that he came in, it wasn't a shock that he was into a lot of gang activity and did a lot of things that those young teenagers from the ghetto would do. And looking at him from the outside, he damn near looked like a Tookie Williams type of dude, especially if he would have worked out and got a lot of muscles and stuff like that. But see, that Cancer moon that Barry White had, he had this inner sensitiveness to him. And when Barry White got locked up for the first time, that's when he really decided that, look man, this ain't the type of life that I want to keep living. This isn't the life for me. And when I get out of here, I want to do something more productive with my life and be a musician. So that's what Barry White set out to do. And as we can see, he's a damn good legend when it comes to singing his music and his legacy and all of that. And even when it came to him singing, just like with Young Jeezy, because he kind of got a similar life story when it comes to this, but he wasn't even really supposed to be a singer like that. Something happened where he needed to cut a demo, so he just decided to sing the part, but he was really shopping it out for somebody else to sing it. But I think something happened to where the engineer loved his voice so much that they just decided decided to let him cut the record, and then the rest is history. Now, with Barry White, he could have used his outward appearance since he was a big burly dude and stayed in the streets, became even more of a problem in the streets. And I would imagine that he probably had some old friends that came up in the hood with him that he was doing things with that was probably like, yo man, why are you doing this? You need to use what God gave you and be a muscle out in these streets. And I remember looking at a documentary about Barry White, and he was even talking about how his mom was crying and telling him that you don't need to go out there, you don't know nobody, them white folks is gonna take advantage of you and all of this other stuff. But through it all, Barry White decided within himself to play his game. And since he started playing his game, he was victorious at it. And when I look out in the world and I look at these men and I look at the community and I look at just people around me in general, in a lot of ways, I just see a lot of sheeple. I just see a lot of people that's going along to get along. Nobody's really thinking for themselves. And we have this type of system, parasitic system in our community, that if somebody is in our community and they want to think outside the box and be original and be authentic, you have so many people that's gonna tear that person down to the point where if they're not strong enough in their will, they may give up. And that's the worst thing that you can do as a creator, being a creative person. That's the worst thing that you can do, is try to conform because of peer pressure. And this is something that I learned at an earlier time in my life coming into the conscious community. I forgot who said it first. I don't know if it was Young Pharaoh or somebody else. I don't even remember, but they were saying something about this quote from Bruce Lee saying that in your life, you're gonna have many masters who's gonna want to teach you things, but not 100% of everything that they have you're going to really be able to work with. So the key is to learn what you need to know from each master and then leave the rest, and maybe somebody else can come along and that'll be for them to get. And I really took that principle and applied it to my life when it comes to everything, when it comes to the conscious community, when it comes to the unconscious community, when it comes to the manosphere, the alpha, whatever you call it, the alpha sphere or whatever. Because one thing that I learned is a lot of these guys, they literally talk about the same exact thing. But when it comes to them coming together and being unified, there's a lot of bickering and arguing. And I'm like, dude, all of y'all are talking about the same thing. So why can't y'all just come together and y'all channels will blow up even faster? So essentially, that's really what it means when you're talking about playing your game. You're not really conforming to what everybody else is doing when it comes to their way of achieving a certain goal. You have your own unique way of doing things and it works for you. That's pretty much what it is. So that's really the subject of this video. And I want to kind of give some examples of this in the realm of the Orishas, in the realm of just my personal life. And I want to talk about the metaphysics of the Trickster, because just like how Urzuli Danto gets a bad rap and she's actually a good person if you get to know her, the Trickster entity is looked at as a bad rap. But the Trickster is one of the most revered and respected entities in any spiritual system that you go to, but they're always going to be looked at as something evil, and not a lot of people even want to deal with them. But at the end of the day, the Trickster is one of the most knowledgeable spiritual entities out there, and I'm going to explain those examples using Elegua, the boy, Papa Legba, the older man, and Eshu, because all three of these deities represent that same energy in different ways. And I have a lot of videos talking about Elegua and Papa Legba and all of that, but me dealing with this Virgo energy, you know, I want to break things down a little bit more. So first off, when you talk about playing your game, you have a lot of these MGTOW brothers talking about all women are bitches and all women do this, all women do that. And one thing that a master teacher really told me is to never ever lump all people or all in one category, because we're all different. Now, what is just what is, meaning that every man that's come from a different background and all of that are going to have their own unique set of characteristics about them. But male nature is just is, and it's something that we all have some type of resonance to. Now, how we're going to express our male nature is going to totally depend on our environment and how we was raised and how we were taught, and if our morals and standards are high enough. And this is the same thing that goes for women. I always say that all women in their own way can be bitchy, but not all women are bitches. You know, you got some women out there, they try to follow after the footsteps of their ratchet friends, and they tried it, they didn't like it, meaning that whatever moral compass that they had growing up, it was strong enough to not let that Lilith energy overtake her. So she just decided to do her own thing, because at the end of the day, in my book, bitches, as what you call it, they're a whole other class of women. I mean, they literally got their own look, they got their own attitude. It's not really a skin color when it comes to it. You got all different types, but there's so many videos out there that can show you how to identify one, how to treat them, all of that kind of stuff. So when you heard NWA make that song about bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, we know that we were just talking about a certain class of women. But once that term got so heavily used like it is, it got to a point where people tried to synonymize that word with all women. And I feel like that's something that has been heavily misconstrued, and I feel like it's due to a lack of balance, because even in Queen Latifah's song Unity, when she was literally talking about guys who walk up to women who aren't putting themselves out there to be bitches and calling them that word, and just like Queen Latifah said, everybody knows there's exceptions to this rule, and I don't get mad if we play it, it's cool. And just that line alone, there's not a lot of women out there in mass who are honest with themselves when it comes to that. Even Tupac, he made a song called You Wonder Why They Call You Bitch, and I remember he got a lot of flack for that too, but he was telling the truth when it came to the type of women that he dealt with and the things that they did and the characteristics that those particular women had. And in our black community today, the main thing that I've been hearing over and over is this toxic masculinity, all of this stuff about toxic masculinity. And in wake of this conversation, there's two words that can literally solve that, because in my life, I still don't know what that really means like that, because I don't see quote unquote toxic masculinity when I look around. What I see is effeminization. I see degradation when it comes to our black men. I see every single day something is happening that's taking away our manhood and taking away our childhood innocence and taking away that divine masculine. So I don't even see where that's coming from. But just to end that argument, because what I truly think it is that you have a lot of men that's waking up and they're seeing that this system that we're living in is not really beneficial for us men to do the things that we used to do. I mean, we don't really have the protection that we should have, so it's almost dangerous to do certain things. And when it comes to women, it's very, very dangerous to marry or get into a relationship with the wrong woman, because for a man, there's a lot of consequences that comes with that. So you have many men out here that's just deciding to go their own way. They just deciding to not deal with women, period. And then you have those type of guys who deal with women on more of a pimp type of prospect, and they're not looking for marriage, they're not looking for a relationship, they just want to relieve themselves with them and then dip out. And that's something that's not good for the ecosystem when it comes to different businesses that thrive on relationships having to happen. You know, there's less marriages going on, there's less weddings going on. But in my opinion, the way to end this quote unquote toxic masculinity is to inject a balanced dose of divine femininity into the atmosphere. And you know, in my podcast, I always talk about the Orisha Obanani, and by far she's like one of my favorite because she represents that divine feminine wife type of character. And Obanani being banished to the cemetery, it kind of is symbolic to saying that in a lot of ways, that particular archetype of a wife, of a divine educator, divine mother type of entity, a lot of that energy died along with Obanani. Now, I'm not saying that you can't find one, but what I'm saying is that system, that spiritual system that we used to have back in those ancient times, that would prepare that woman, prepare that little girl to be someone's wife. That system that we used to have as black people to prepare our daughters to be wives and to be educators of our children and to be just great homemakers in general. When you talk to the average millennial girl or millennial guy or whatever, the first thing they say is, man, times have changed. You know, that was the old way of doing things. You know, we're in a new microwave type of generation now, to where the lady that's fully clothed and she got that mystery about her and all of that, who would be a modern day Obanani, she's looked past for the thought chick who got everything out where you can see it. And there's an oversaturation of those type of women that you see in the media and plastered all over your Instagrams and your Twitters and all of that stuff, that it makes Obanani look very, very uninteresting and very boring, until a situation happens to where you done dealt with so many of those that you're just all broken inside and traumatic, and you just like fuck all women and all of this stuff. Now that's where you get the toxic masculinity from, in my opinion. And also, there's not a lot of divine masculine men out there who's having kids and teaching their sons how to be divinely masculine, not this artificial super aggressive type of masculinity that we've learned from these soulless beings that control this world, aka this matrix system that we're living in. Because most of these divinely masculine guys, they kind of see the game, so they're choosing not to play, whether it's to have a vasectomy or just have protective sex all their lives or go MGTOW or whatever, because they just choose to no longer play the game because they don't see the benefit in playing the game. So speaking of playing the game and playing your game, let's talk about Obanani for a minute. So we all know that Obanani was a very, very great fighter. You know, she's heavily revered when it comes to that arena, and she's the one that taught her sisters about fighting and about defense and things like that. And when you look at how all three of these women took just the central knowledge and made their own fighting styles out of it, that is a real good example of you playing your own game with information that's available to everybody. So let's take Obanani for example, because I'm very glad that, at least with me for example, I was able to build that real personal relationship with the Orishas without the whole ceremony initiation. And I don't have anything negative to say about people who are initiated and did go through different rituals and ceremonies and things like that, but I'm just glad that my ancestors did all of that part for me. So all I had to do is just rekindle a relationship that my ancestors already set up for me before I was even born. So I already got access to certain things, and I'm still learning more, and I'm still on this journey. So I don't really know nothing. I just learn as I go. So Obanani, her fighting style is a lot more calculated, meaning that she's going to use everything that's around her, everything inside of her to her advantage, but only if it's necessary. Meaning that if she sees a conflict or a situation that could be avoided just by saying the right things or just by using her femininity in a certain way, she would use that if that would mean that she wouldn't have to pull out her sword. And even if the conflict arises to the point where she has to pull out her sword, she's still level-headed to the point where if she sees that to get her point across or whatever, she can just poke you in a certain place that'll hurt you, but it won't kill you. She'll rather do that than to just take your life. So Obanani, she thrives on technique, and she's always learning different moves, learning different styles. Just she's always learning, and she's always educating her sisters and the people that is under her that same principle. Now Oya, on the other hand, her fighting style is a lot more wild and a lot more destructive. You know, she took some of the things that Obanani taught her, and then she took her own unorthodox ways of fighting or whatever and put them together. So now you have this real chaotic, real dangerous and destructive type of fighting style. That's why Oya, she represents the tornado. She represents the storms, because with Oya, in order for you to fully transform, sometimes you have to destroy everything and rebuild all the way from scratch in order to get the result that you want. So Oya is the type of woman to where if you say you want to change a life, or you say you want to transform or something like that, she'll come through with her tornado, and she'll come through with her hurricane. And anything that doesn't suit you, anything that doesn't suit your transformation, even if it's something that you actually like, or even if it's something that you had trouble letting go of or whatever, she'll just in a snap just take it all the way out your life. And you may feel very, very empty inside after, because those things inhabited you for so long. But at the end, when the transformation happens and you're that new being, and then you kind of look at the way you used to be and all of that, you'll think, oh yeah, she always gets her praise at the end of the transformation, not at the beginning or the middle. Now Oshun, I would say she's one of the most dangerous assassins, because with Oshun, with her being so innocent and so sweet and so beautiful, she can catch you off guard in a few ways. Now most of the things that Obanani taught Oshun turned a lot of those things into dance moves. That's why Oshun is so good at dancing, because she turned a lot of those fighting moves from Obanani, and she made different dances and things like that out of it. And she's the type of woman to where if she moves her hips a certain way and she captivates you, and you come closer and closer and closer because you think you're about to get some honey, while she's dancing on you and grinding on you and all of that stuff, she's slowly disarming you, taking away your gun, taking away your knife, taking away any weapon that you have, and you just mesmerized. You just looking at that ass, you just looking at them hips, and all the while she's disarming the hell out of you. So when it's time for her to do her attack, you're wide open and you're defenseless, and all it takes is one sting from that bee. And if you don't got no EpiPen and you're allergic to bee stings, you're dead. And you wondering, how the hell did this chick take away all of my weapons and disarm me like that, and I didn't even know? See, that's why I say Oshun, she real cold at it. She real cold, you know, because she represents that queen bee, and she represents the bees in general. And like I said, all it takes is one sting from that bee, and if you ain't got your EpiPen, you dead right there on sight. So that's an example of how Obanani taught her sisters different defensive strategies and fighting moves, and how they was able to take that and put their own flavor behind it and make it work for them. Even with me, when I look at this stuff about the manosphere and looking at this stuff about what makes an alpha male, and even though I try not to get caught up in names and titles and all of that stuff, I'm quick to tell somebody that I ain't shit because the power and the prestige and the dominance energy that I have is because of my inner self and my higher self working together. What you see in front of you is just a shell that's gonna die and be buried into the ground. And that's what keeps me humble. So I was never really depressed, and I never got to a point where I was suicidal, but when I was younger, I did have low self-esteem. Not because I thought I was ugly or anything like that. I had low self-esteem simply because there was just certain things that was going on with me that I couldn't control. Like I had real bad acne coming up as a kid. I had real bad eczema, so I would have to wear long sleeve shirts even when it was hot outside. And when I would take my shirt off, I would get laughed at because of my arms and, you know, the rashes and all of that. So when I used to get picked on at school, I always would chump it up to, I'm not ugly as a person. It's just some things that is just out of my control right now. now. And once I graduate and get a job and start making my own money and all of that, I'll be able to change those things about myself, and then people are going to start to see me for who I really am. And as a child, I would imagine what that person would be like. That type of person that is loved by all the women in the world. That type of person that is revered and respected. And when I was in the 6th grade, that's when I came up with my first rap name, which was Playboy P. And it took me a while to start rapping under that name. For a while, Playboy P was just an entity that I created that was pretty much this other side of me, that didn't have bumps on his face, the other side of me that had perfect skin, the other side of me that I can just walk into a room and all the women in the room just get wet and just be like, ah, you know, those cartoons and stuff. And all I had to do was just say, come here, and wink, and all the women would just fall out and come to me on some super celebrity type shit. And when I would go to sleep, I would have these vivid dreams about me being Playboy P, and I'm just dominating everything. I'm the dopest rapper on the scene. I'm the most prominent ladies man on the scene. I'm just that nigga in my dreams being Playboy P. So in the dream world, I would build and build and build and build. I would put so much energy into that Playboy P entity that once I got into middle school, I started looking at a lot of these pickup artist type shows. I started looking at a lot of these game type shows, and that's really when I saw Tariq Nasheed for the first time, because he used to be in this show called Charm School. And when I would see how he would talk to women and everybody liked them and all of that type of stuff, he reminded me a lot of Playboy P, because that's exactly how he was. So I would take those things that I learned from all of those shows, and since I felt like at the time Ricky was too incapable of pulling these things off, but I know that Playboy P would be able to pull it off. Playboy P kind of became a mask for me, you know. It was kind of like one of those things where when you watch the Power Rangers and you see this dude and he's just a regular dude, but when trouble arises, he says, kick into overdrive, Red Ranger, and he do this little dance, and then he turns into a Power Ranger. And when he's a Power Ranger, his power quadruples, and he's able to do things in that suit that he normally isn't able to do as a human. So in the Alphasphere, they always talk about having an abundance mindset when it comes to women, and they talk about different methods on how they achieve that. Now for me, my story is a whole lot different, because with me having the low self-esteem that I had, on top of me having to take a lot of medication as a kid to help me to go to sleep and stuff like that, just like when Bobby Hemmett was talking about that blue pill, I was able to jack in, as you would say. And when I jacked in, I was able to create these worlds where Playboy P was the hottest dude on the block. He got all the hoes, everybody loved him, and he was just this warrior. And I've been in this spirit world creating this dude for years and years and years, putting energy into that. And it got to the point where when I was in middle school and I would see a girl that I like, all I would need to do is just look at her from head to toe, you know, say what's up to her, hear her voice and all of that, and I could literally go to sleep and have a dream about Playboy P, the part of me that had no fear, the part of me that was just the sexiest dude ever, you know, would just see that same girl, and literally she looked the exact same. The way she looked in school, she looked the exact same in my dream. And man, it'll be like clockwork. I look at her, do my little wink, be like, come here, and she come over all googly eyed and just recessive and feminine as ever, and we end up kissing or whatever, because I was in middle school, so I didn't really know anything about sex. So it'll most likely be we just kissing. But I would wake up the next morning with so much confidence and so much energy, because in my mind I feel like I just got with her, because not only was I able to create the dreams, I was able to remember my dreams too, and they felt so vivid and so real that those dreams started to become memories. So in my mind, I'm like, shoot, I already done got with her. So I really didn't care if I walked up to her and shot my shot and she shot me down, because in my mind, I'm like, shoot, I already done got with you, so I don't even care. And it got to the point where the more I did that and the more fearless I became when it came to approaching women and stuff like that, my friends would point out girls for me to talk to, and they'll be scared to approach them, and I would just walk up to them and say what's up. Now, did I get all of their numbers, or did I get with all of those girls? Hell no. Like I said, I didn't lose my virginity until after high school. But I just said that to say my journey of being the man that I am today when it comes to approaching women and talking to women and just being a cool person around a woman to the point where she would want to open up to me and things like that. We all have our own story when it comes to it. And even though now that I identify more with my higher self, which is Mr.BandClap, I still have those instances sometimes where I can go within and bring that character out, because when you create these entities, especially when you create them as a child, and the more and the more and the more you feed it and the more you take care of it, those entities become your spirit guides. So with me, a lot of the things that C Boogie talk about, you know, talking about the Dom game, and a lot of things that even Dr. VOA talks about when he talk about different aspects of the pimp game, a lot of these things I knew about internally before I could even understand it, because since since Playboy P was an underworld type of entity. When I would have these vivid dreams and stuff, the older I got, all of those things that they was talking about are things that I would do when I was Playboy P. That, along with certain game that I learned from my uncles and other OG cats and other PI cats that I used to hang out with when I was a lot older. So if I wanted to have a whole slew of quote-unquote succubus type women, I would know how to pull them because I have, and I would know how to treat them, especially in the bedroom. But with me being a lot older and being a lot wiser and being a lot more in tune with my higher self, I find that now I'm just more about finding women that are of a higher vibration, because in this time that we're living in now, if a woman doesn't benefit you in a magical way, there's no use to even giving your sexual energy to them. I mean, that's just how I feel. And for a lot of people, that's not something that they're just going to be able to do like that, simply because in order to be able to attract those type of high vibrational type of women, you as a man have to build yourself up so you can be that reflection of that which you're trying to attract. And for some people, that can take a while. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but when you finally do it, you'll be glad you did. So shout out to brother Clink Scales, because he put out this video yesterday talking about she's always thinking about him. And he talks about that woman that you may be in a relationship, or that woman that you may have married. And even though you think she's quote unquote all yours, if you haven't imprinted her the right way, remember that podcast that I did about the woman's imprint, there's always going to be this certain type of man that every woman is not really going to be able to quote unquote get rid of spiritually and mentally, even though they may not be physically with them at the time. And this comes from a conversation that I had with Papa Legba, because I always wondered, does Alegba have a wife, or does Papa Legba have a quote unquote significant other? And he says, yeah, I got one. I mean, I got many, but I do have that one person that's real close to me, if you want to say it like that. Now, this type of entity has a lot of names depending on what diaspora you're in, depending on what type of area you're in, whatever type of spiritual system that you're in. But in my definition, the best way to explain this energy is Pumbagita. And in a lot of ways, Pumbagita in spiritual terms is looked at as the divine whore. Now, when people hear that word whore, they automatically think of something negative and all of that. But spiritually, sex is a very, very primitive, primordial, and the most intimate form of communication that you can have with somebody. And just like how you have to be careful who you talk to, you have to be careful who you have sex with. And a divine whore is a woman who only has sex with righteous men. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say positive or good looking or got money or whatever. I said a divine whore is a woman who has sex with righteous men. And a righteous man is someone who's divinely masculine, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And the sexual exchanges between these two beings are always something positive. Now, naturally, she's not gonna find a whole lot of righteous men out there, because I mean, in this world that we're living in, just like how it takes a certain type of woman to be able to be feminine in this succubus type of world out here, the same thing goes for men too. It takes a certain type of man to not want to mess with a certain type of woman that's holding that negative type of energy that's destructive and non-conducive to him being his best self. Now, Pumbagita, she's a very, very beautiful woman, but she's very fierce as well. And she's a good-hearted woman, you know. She's a very protective spirit. And when it comes to these quote-unquote ladies of the night, she's a spirit that protects them from thieves and rapists and pedophiles, people who don't mean these women no kind of good. And she's the type of woman to where it don't matter who you are, what type of walk of life that you're in, because you have a lot of men out there who they're pretty much dormant. I mean, they have potential to be very, very great when it comes to society and the things that they have on the inside, but since they've been void of poom poom, it's something that some guys just can't get over. And they can be one step to becoming an incel and throwing their whole life away, and all of a sudden they just meet this real fine ass chick, and she sees the potential that's in him, and she know that if she give him some, with payment of course, that'll be what he needs to kickstart his life for the better. You know, she's the type of woman that you can call on to help you out when no other Orisha, no other god or goddess, no other person can help you. You know, she'll be that last resort, diamond in the rough type of being. But when it's time for you to pay her, you better pay up, because if you don't, there are dire consequences to that. I mean, she don't play. But not only do you have to worry about her, she's so revered and so respected in her own light that if you do some kind of miraculous way get away from her clutches, you won't be safe out in the streets, because no matter what people say about Pumbagita, her name rings bells in the streets. And I can go a lot deeper about Pumbagita, but I'm gonna let y'all do y'all own research about her. But one thing that Alegba told me was that you got fools, you got tricks, and you got tricksters. A fool in this analogy is someone who just constantly gets played by a woman, but they're just so ignorant to the fact that they're getting played that it's almost sad. And then you got the trick. The trick is the guy who his self-worth is so down in the dumps that he feels like he needs to pay a woman just for her time with him. And then you got the trickster. He's that guy who's able to use and read every physical, mental, and emotional cue about a woman, and he's able to manipulate those cues to work in his favor all the time. So like he told me, a trickster loves playing the fool because real G's move in silence. It's like an invisible cloak. But a trick could never play a trickster because a trickster can't be tricked, meaning that if a woman sees you as a trick, it's like getting into the friend zone. You'll never really be able to change her perception about you after that. But if a woman sees you as a fool, she may go ahead and give you a chance simply because she thinks that she's going to be able to take advantage of you afterwards. And then once you got her in your trap, you unleash that beast on her, and now she's just looking all confused like, damn, what just happened? You just got tricked by the trickster. Now the trickster, he always has a bad rap, and it's really not his fault because all he's doing is taking the things that's given to him, and he knows how to use everything in his environment to his advantage. So let's take Alegua for example, because he's in that realm of the trickster spirits. When you look at Alegua in the Orisha pantheon, the reason why Alegua sees all and knows all is because he always is somewhere planting himself around and observing everything that's going on. The reason why him and Oshun are so close, because when you look at the energy of Oshun, Humbagira in a lower type of form is a path of Oshun, because even in things that Humbagira does, she in a lot of ways is a woman of charity as well, because she helps out those needy people that no one else wanted to help. But the reason why he's able to deal with Oshun the way he does is because for a long time he watched Oshun. He was with her when she didn't have nothing, and he was with her when she had it all. And just to let her know that she can still get got at any time, Alegua played some tricks on Oshun. One of those tricks being, like I said in my last video, Alegua used his magic and turned these planks of wood into some dolls, and he made these dolls the most beautiful dolls known to man. They was just so beautiful and so captivating, because with him being around Oshun, he knew that if he could make something beautiful and captivating just like her, she would want it, and she would spend everything to get it. And that's exactly what happened. Oshun took the bait, gave Alegua all of her riches and all of her gold just to get those beautiful dolls. And then once she got them back to her house, she found out that she was tricked, and all she had was 2 pieces of wood. And even with Shango, when he went and stole Oya away from Ogun, it was Alegua who was able to jump in between that and tell the truth and tell Ogun that no, Oya was the one that came on to Shango first. She pretty much threw herself on him while you were gone. Shango didn't rape Oya or none of that. And the reason why he knows all this, because he was at the door. He was the one that had to let him in. And even when it came to treating women, he's able to transform himself into anything that that woman would want. So now he got her physically, mentally, and spiritually. For example, let's talk about Oya, because see, Oya, she's a very protective mother type of figure, even though when it comes to the aggressive side, she can have a lot of masculine energy about her. So it wouldn't be too ideal to come to her as a real bold alpha male type of figure. I mean, you could get a few things out of her or whatever, but in Alegua's mind, he wanted to get the most out of you. So in that case, Alegua would transform himself into the little boy version of himself, because at the end of the day, it don't matter how masculine you are as a woman. When you see a child, it's something about that innocence in that child's eyes that'll make the most butch type of woman turn feminine in an instant. And as long as she's in her feminine, he's able to get anything out of her that he wants. And then you take somebody like Oshun, she's more soft and sensual and happy, and since she got her own kids, if he wants some things out of Oshun, it would be better for him to come to her in a more adult type of form. That way he can get all the honey. And the list goes on and on and on. Now the thing about it is, the reason why you don't have a lot of tricksters out there, because at the end of the day, it's hard. It's very, very hard being a trickster, simply because just like Obanani, you never stop learning. You always have to be ahead of the game. You always have to have your ear to nature, and you also have to have an ear to the streets. And that's the reason why Alegua is at the crossroad, because that represents that true balance between the spirit world as well as the material world. And in a more human aspect, that man who's able to imprint that woman spiritually as well as physically, that's going to be hard to top, because just like Alegua and Oshun, no matter how far away they are from each other, if the situation permits, they're going to always find their way back to each other in some type of way. And a good example of this is, I remember I was at this Google Hangout, and I think C Boogie, Dr. BOA, a couple other people was in the Hangout with ARC, and ARC was talking about this woman that he heavily imprinted, and they had a small relationship and they ended up breaking up. But the imprint that he had on her was so great to the point that even when she got married, she was still calling him up on the phone talking about, you know, my husband wants to have sex with me, but I don't really want to do it. Do you think I should do it, daddy? ARC was like, in a more PG type of way, he was like, girl, go have sex with your man. And she was like, really? Do you really think I should do it? Do you really think I should do it? It's like, yeah, get out the phone with me, go have sex with your man. And I can't lie, that was very, very powerful. And it shows me that you have to be extremely knowledgeable in order to even pull something like that off. And that takes a lot of physical work. It takes a lot of spiritual work. It takes a lot of you going through experiences and getting the wisdom out of those experiences. Being a trickster is not just about women. It's about being a master magician in your life, period. And I personally don't think that it should be a bad thing, because even though we call spirits like Elegua and Papa Legba and Anansi, even though we call these trickster spirits in other mythologies, these deities are looked at as Horus type figures. Because I mean, the best way to describe Alegua's energy in a lot of ways is that little baby, and that baby may have a big brother, and that big brother want to go out and do stuff, sometimes stuff that he ain't supposed to do, and mom be like, go take your little brother with you. Big brother be like, all right, come on little bro, just make sure you quiet and don't be saying nothing. And the thing about it is, it's cool while he's a baby, because big bro go out and do his thing while little bro watching somewhere in the cut playing with his toys, like, oh, he don't know nothing, he just over there in his own little world. When on the flip side, that baby taking in all of that stuff. And then when it's time for y'all to go home and mama pick that baby up, that baby be like, and then mom be like, oh, what you trying to say? And then big brother started to side-eye that baby, because he know what he trying to say. It's just that he hasn't developed the vocal capacity to snitch yet. And then fast forward 4 or 5 years later, now that baby can walk and talk and comprehend and all of that stuff. And it's time for you to take that little brother out, and you over here trying to do something with a girl, or you over here doing something you ain't supposed to do. And big brother be like, look, if you don't tell your mama what I did, when mama come home, instead of me getting the big piece of chicken, I'm gonna give you the big piece of chicken. And little brother be like, for real? Okay, deal. So he keep his mouth shut. Then when it's time to go home and mama got the food all ready and all of that, little brother go for the big piece. Big brother slap it out of his hand, be like, nah, I'm just playing. You better go over there and get that little piece of chicken. Then little brother open up his mouth, Mom, guess what big brother did? And big brother be like, all right. I'm just playing. Here you go. Then little brother starts snickering. So hopefully I shed some more light on this topic, because I feel like in our own way, we should all strive to be magicians. We should all have the type of knowledge to be able to manipulate things in the spirit world. So when they come to the physical world, it'll be everything that you always wanted, and you'll be able to live your best life the way you want to live it. And the beautiful thing about it is, the trickster is the most respected when it comes to women, because they know that he's not gonna judge them the way other men would judge them. And a lot of times those type of women would confide in the trickster in different ways that they wouldn't confide in any other man, simply because he knows. And when you have that type of mentality, you're gonna automatically repel those other type of women who would have manipulated you or anything like that, because those type of women, they want to manipulate you and they want to suck all your energy and all of that kind of stuff. And the trickster is no use to them, because they know that he can't be tricked, so they have no choice but to straighten up when they're around him. They act quote unquote on their best behavior when they're around the trickster. Now the trickster knows not to have sex with these type of women, but he's always able to get anything else out of them simply because he is who he is. And that's pretty much just you learning about female nature, learning about what the divine feminine is to you, and getting to that point to where you want to manifest a reflection of you that you're going to be able to tolerate in any type of circumstance, and you're not going to settle for less no matter what. And the reason why Papa Legba and Pumbagita are so cool and so close, because he still got enough mystery in him that she can't really figure out. So they got this genuine trust for each other. You know, she understands him, he understands her. She's not going to bring no negativity to him, he's not going to bring no negativity to her. She got to treat him right, because at the end of the day, who's going to treat you better? And it's vice versa. And lastly, he not tripping on her because he know what he doing on his side, and she definitely can't control him because she know what she doing on her side, and she thinks she knows what he's doing on his side. So I'm gonna end this video with my favorite quote: the greatest couple known to man is the man who knows himself and the woman who loves herself. That's why Elegua and Oshun would always be close, and Papa Legba and Pumbagita would always be the most unperfectly perfect couple that I can think of at this moment. So like I said, I'm just doing my little ramble about different things that I feel like you all should know. And don't worry, the Biggie podcast is still coming. It's just gonna come in its divine timing, and I'll be coming out with some more videos soon as well too. So all right y'all, until next time, I'm out.